Today we're talking about a job interview, and I'm going to give you some phrases that you can use during job interview. And what really helps me with the conversations that I'm kind of afraid of when I'm nervous, it really helps to learn some phrases, because when you're thinking about what to answer, you have something that you can start with. And this is something I would highly advise you to memorize. But a couple of things before we get into phrases. First of all, if you get invited to a job interview, congrats. Because normally the funnel looks like a company receives like 1,000 applications. They go through all of them. They give potential employees, a couple of tests. Then like 90% of people drop off during the tests. And then they go through resumes. And they only interview maybe like 10, 20, 30 people, depending on how selective they are during the process. So congratulations if you made it through to the interview, because it means that you're really, really good and you've been selected from like thousands of applicants. But now your goal is to prove to your employer, potential employer, that you are the one that you were talking about in your resume, letters and your cover letters that you submitted. Because sometimes people, have really good qualifications, but then they come and talk about them and you realize, I'm not sure he actually done that. Or maybe they just, in terms of like personality, you don't match with the employer. And some employers have like a lot of interviews. You might have like 6 different interviews and you have to please 6 people with your answers. Just get ready for that. There's no need to change your personality, to change the way you are. But it makes a lot of sense to prepare for an interview. Read about the company, read about their mission, read about the people you're interviewing with, research their LinkedIn profiles, look at their hobbies, compliment them. Like if you find out that they like something, compliment them on that, compliment them on their articles. When I was interviewing for 500 Startups, I was interviewing with Purnima and I congratulated her on her YouTube channel because she was starting YouTube, and I Googled everything about her. And I started our interview with a phrase like, "Hey Purnima, great to meet your person. I actually just watched a couple of your videos on YouTube. Congrats, the quality is amazing, the content is great. I think you have a great future on YouTube. I'm also a YouTuber, so totally understand where you're going through." So something that you can relate to, something that the person can relate to. And this helps establish the relationship. It helps you stand out from the crowd. So what I also advise you to do is to watch a free video that I made on top 9 questions that you're asked during the interview. And I give you basic answers that you can use. And this is based on my own experience of interviewing people. And I interview people every month. I try to do that less and less, but I just have to interview people myself for the positions are under me. So people who work with me, I just need to interview them to make sure we're on the same page. The next thing to pay attention to is the way you look during the interview. Because if you're interviewing for a company in Silicon Valley, don't wear a suit. If it's a startup, nobody wears a suit and it looks weird. If you're interviewing with a bank, even in Silicon Valley, bankers all wear suits. So there's like a company code, look at the pictures of their offices. Just try to relax, try to learn some phrases, and try to research what people ask during those interviews. Because you can go to Quora.com and a lot of people share their experience of going through an interview with one particular company. So you can always prepare for those kind of things if it's a big company, because people normally share their experience. Let me give you some phrases today that you can use during your interview. As always, start with small talk, maybe complimenting the person who's interviewing you on something. And I hope you're going to do your research. The first phrase, it's great to meet you, and talk about the associate role in your company, or talk about the sales position role in your company. So hello, it's great to meet you. Thank you for inviting me over to the interview. It's great to talk to you about how I can fit into this role. There are several ways to say that. Then I would just present yourself in a short way. So what I do all the time, yes, I have the resume of a person, and yes, I have their cover letter. But what I really like is to ask a person to present himself or herself in 1 minute, in less than 1 minute. Because in this way, I'm able to capture what actually matters to that person. Please use this minute wisely. So for example, I'm a graphic designer with over 5 years of experience specializing in creating unique website experiences that increase companies' revenues, that increase CTRs. Just be professional here again. Mention the examples of whatever you're doing. I'm looking forward to growing my management skills. I've already managed 3 people. Be happy to, tell you more about myself during this interview. Be very specific, be very professional. Describe your professional journey and how you ended up applying for this job. There is also a very important section about questions that you have to ask the employer. And in my free video that you have to watch, I'm talking about the importance of those questions because they allow an employer to measure how interested you are in applying for this position. There are a couple of questions that you can ask. I'm going to give you some examples that I wrote down here for you. Can you explain some of the day-to-day responsibilities this job entails? Because sometimes you're applying for like a management position and you know that you're going to manage sales and marketing, or you're going to manage the IT team. But maybe there's already a standard routine that a company has, and just getting acquainted with it before you start is a really important thing. How would you describe the characteristics of someone who would succeed in this role? This is important for you because you would be able to understand who's the employer looking for, what kind of person they're looking for, what matters the most. Because maybe they had to fire the previous employee because he was always late, and this is something that's crucial for them. And they're going to mention that, and you would be able to assess your chances based on what you've said before. If I were in this position, how would my performance be measured and how often? This is also really important. Asking about KPIs, like how do you know that you're successful in the job? Maybe they would tell you it's going to be measured by revenue, or maybe they're going to tell you it's going to be measured quarterly based on customers' feedback. This also shows that you're responsible for your work and you're going to be measured, and you're just asking like, what's the way to measure it? What departments does this team work with regularly? How do these departments typically collaborate? What does the process look like? Again, every job position requires collaboration, and sometimes people just get overwhelmed with communicating with too many departments, and it's good to know beforehand if this job requires that. What are the challenges you're currently facing in your role? You can ask this question if a person who interviews you is in the same department, or maybe he's or she's going on a maternity leave and is looking for a replacement. So it's good to know what the challenges are. Maybe if the person you're talking to comes up with challenges, suggest how you would solve them. You're like, oh, I know dealing with too many teammates can be daunting, especially when you have your own things that you need to accomplish. But what we've done in my previous workplace? We use Slack chats. Slack chats are amazing, whatever. Like everybody uses Slack here. America is run on Slack. Before that, it was email. Now it's mostly Slack is like day-to-day operations. Email is something that can wait, so you don't expect the immediate answer. And then, there's snail mail, which is like the standard mail for like official notifications or something. It's a good practice to follow up with somebody you interviewed with an email, and just thank them for the interview, thank them for meeting you in person, and what you don't have to do is be like, oh, I actually remembered that I had to mention this, this, and that. I prefer to think they've already made a decision, and this is how it normally happens after the interview. They assess your application, they put down their decision, and then later they compare you with other applicants. Please don't do like something, oh, I forgot to mention that I did this, this, and that. By the way, because normally it's not very important, and it's not very polite, because they've already spent the amount of time they were supposed to spend on you, and just going through an extra email, going through extra information is not something that is in their responsibilities. So I would refrain from doing that. I would just help them. I would just thank them, and I would tell them like, hey, should you have any further questions? Happy to talk to you, happy to follow up. That was it for me for today, guys. In my next lecture, I'm going to move on to presenting your project to investors, do's and don'ts. I will see you soon in the next class.